Everyone drafts off ADP, but league winners don't follow consensus. They exploit it, so I rebuilt my top 24 by tiering every player based on one question. Will this guy actually help you win your league? Starting with the superior tier, these guys are no-brainer anchors, the players who combine talent, role, and trust. You draft as much of them as possible, and you let everyone else overthink it. Starting with Ja'Marr Chase, this is what happens when everything finally aligns. Chase hit 111 receptions, over 1,700 yards, and 17 touchdowns, all while finishing number 1 in targets per game. He wasn't dominant. He was inevitable. This is the first time since 2019 that we've seen a wide receiver separate from the pack this much. He cleared the wide receiver 2 by 50 plus fantasy points in PPR, and there's no cheat code here, just elite volume, elite red zone usage, and no target competition. Even Burrow's injury didn't derail him. But that's the quiet story. The Bengals defense got worse, not better. If anything, Chase's game scripts are only going to get juicier, and there's no tight end, no running back 1, and no target hog standing in his way. So you're not just drafting the wide receiver 1, you're drafting the gap. He gives you a 10 plus point margin in most weeks based on who you'll be playing against, and that's a lot of leverage building your lineup. Pass on him and you'll be playing from behind all season. Justin Jefferson, not far behind Chase. There's really no projection here that's relevant, just historical proof. Jefferson has the highest yards per game average of any wide receiver basically ever, and he's never finished below the wide receiver 8 in points per game. No one else in the league touches that kind of floor. But what makes him different is what didn't break. Kevin O'Connell is still the play caller, and the offense still throws. But JJ McCarthy, raw or not, gives this team something they didn't have last year, a pulse in a lot of ways. Jefferson's already talked about McCarthy's arm. That zip is the only thing he needs to turn 12 targets into 30 points for you. Sam Darnold was fine last year, but this might be a real edge because last year his red zone usage didn't dip. He led the team inside the 10 in terms of targets again, and Addison's breakout doesn't seem to cannibalize him. It really just frees him up underneath. There's really no safer floor in fantasy football at the position. If you're going for Chase, you might get a little bit of a higher ceiling, but Jefferson is extremely safe. So I think the best answer is that both of these guys are right at the top of the tier. It wouldn't be the superior tier without talking about Saquon Barkley. He already broke fantasy football last year, but we'll see if he can replicate it this coming year. It wasn't just a career year, it was absolutely historic. He was the engine of the Eagles offense, not just a part of it, but that might be the problem. He was everything, and the backs who handle that kind of volume don't just walk it back the next season, they typically crash. The receiving work tanked, but his reliance on long runs is really what set him apart at the position, and the tush push is still kind of a problem for us in terms of that red zone equity. But Barkley's production definitely wasn't fluky. It was somewhat unsustainable, but I mean, with this offensive line, I think you know what you're getting here. A proven alpha in a system that knows exactly how to unlock him, but really just a back who took some of the hardest hits of his life last year and might be asked to do it all again. There's definitely no safer role, but there might still be a cliff here eventually, but of course, he's still in the superior tier. Let's talk Bijan Robinson, also in the superior tier. He already looked elite, but now the system should catch up this year. Bijan's rookie year was definitely interesting. Top 3 in broken tackles, highlight runs every single week, but we knew he was being held back. But everything's different now. Zach Robinson comes in as offensive coordinator, bringing in an actual plan for how to use a player like this. It's more of a Ram-style system designed to scheme open touches, maximize his space, and really punish defenders who guess wrong on the direction Bijan's going. And I definitely think that he's going to be doing a lot more punishing than watching this year. So as the offense stabilizes, you're looking at a player with top 3 usage, top 3 efficiency, and no real threat to touches. He's not just in the conversation of this tier, he's in the conversation to lead this tier. There's one more player we're going to put in this tier, and it's CeeDee Lamb. He's done it before, and there's a clear runway to do it again. We still can look back to that wide receiver 1 season where he went absolutely crazy, and then last year, we basically saw him cook defenders all year long, even when he was limping around, and without Dak being healthy, there wasn't a whole lot he could do. But now that Dak is back, George Pickens gives just enough coverage relief to stop the bracket doubles. But if you need to squint at 2024, the dip to 6 TDs wasn't talent driven. It was a byproduct of missing games, quarterback inconsistency, and stalled out drives. But in a stable setup, Lamb's shown that he can spike. He could be the wide receiver 1 overall. So you're buying the rebound, not chasing ghosts with this one. Might be one of the cleanest wide receiver bets you can make after Chase. By the way, if you want my full draft kit for free, rankings, sleepers, busts, cheat sheets, go to fantasyaccelerator.com or just hit the first link in the description. You can get full access for free until week 1, but I'm not promising that deal will stay up all summer. All right, let's talk A tier. These guys can win your league, but the path isn't as smooth. The ceiling's elite, but there's still a little bit of noise here in the signal. And let's start with Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously, his explosiveness is completely unfair. He led all running backs in explosive runs and yards per touch last season, and that was still while splitting work with David Montgomery, but the Lions offense might be shifting. They brought in some more weapons. There's a real shot that Gibbs gets used even more in the passing game, which would be amazing, even if Montgomery continues to be kind of that hammer. So as the ceiling grows, the red zone work could be a little bit more frustrating. So I guess that's why he's in this tier, but we still love this guy. He's still definitely a target. Puka Nacua proved it wasn't just a breakout, it was a full system shift. The Rams rebuilt their passing game around him, and now they have Devontae Adams right there with them as we have Cooper Kupp out the door. Still, the volume, scheme fit, there's a lot of trust here from Stafford. He's easily one of the few wide receivers in this tier who could finish in the top 3, and that makes him worth a ride. Malik Nabers not far behind, probably one of the most polarizing picks in the first round, and for good reason. On one hand, you've got that potential alpha. He's being taken at this spot for a reason. The tape shows a lot of explosiveness, suddenness, all of that. The overall offensive environment is still extremely volatile. We still need touchdowns when it comes to finding these ceilings, and I don't expect the Giants to be in scoring position that often this year, no matter who ends up being the quarterback. Still, it's a pretty simple bet here. I think he belongs in this tier, but it's still one of those ones that makes me a little bit squeamish next to some of these other guys. But speaking of squeamish, Christian McCaffrey, I mean, are we going to get the old CMC, or has that time come and gone? We're still not sure. McCaffrey's still taken as a top 5 back, but the tone is a little bit different this year. There's no mystery about his role. He's still going to be on the field for all the passing downs, all the red zone work, all of that. But the injury profile and the age, it's starting to get a little bit louder in this decision. He's 28. He's been through heavy usage years. And for the first time, drafters are openly wrestling with whether or not that ceiling justifies the cost. Here's what's not up for debate. When healthy, he can still help you win his league. He's still elite. It's a great system, all of those things, but he's burned us a few times recently, so I can understand the hesitation. I don't think he's necessarily a trap, but he's one of those ones that could easily be in that superior tier if healthy all year long. Nico Collins showed us what a breakout looks like when it's actually real. He enters this season as the undisputed wide receiver 1 in Houston, and if anything, they've kind of lost some volume here that might push more his direction. They've got a few rookies incoming. The target share, the red zone involvement, the explosive plays, all of it is there, and the consistency was there as well. He was consistently beating some of the best corners in the league without really a lot else that was helping him last year with like the decimated injury of this wide receiver corps. So it's one of those things that's worth flagging, is that Collins did miss a little bit of time. So that's kind of what's keeping him out of that next tier. But I think this is still a guy that you want to be bullish on going into 2025. And for kind of like a mid-second round pick that basically can give you that alpha usage of some of those other guys in the superior tier. Still love this guy. I think there's definitely some safer paths, but if you end up with him, it's a slam dunk. Another guy that's not necessarily sexy, Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's just the guy who ends up on every winning roster every year. Amon-Ra doesn't live off those splash plays. He lives off of volume. 35 red zone targets, 8 inside the 5 made him kind of a touchdown magnet. So you get that ceiling from touchdowns, but you also get that underneath those safe targets in the slot, and he's earning them consistently. Over 50% of his snaps did come out wide last year, which was kind of interesting, but he does end up being the underneath safety blanket for Goff. There's really no massive ceiling concern in my opinion. He's had back-to-back years of like that top tier PPR point per game player. He's not dependent on deep balls, which is also nice. So you're drafting Amon-Ra and basically enjoying that nothing is likely to go wrong. All right, let's talk B tier. This is where the line blurs a little bit. These guys could finish top 5, but there's a catch, whether it's role, age, offense, something in the equation adds just enough risk to keep them outside of the A tier. You're betting on upside with a little bit of unease. And this tier starts with Brian Thomas Jr. He's the classic, looks like an alpha pick, and the metrics back it up. He closed out last season with multiple 30-point games, a massive 35% target share in some of those weeks, and there really wasn't a lot else that was earning targets around him. So the concern is really just the floor of this offense and Trevor Lawrence, because we have seen that floor be much lower than we thought it could be. So we have some spike weeks, but we'll see what happens with this offense in general. But I do think it's trending up, some of the moves that they have made. There's a few guys that they brought in, kind of a different look. We'll see if Lawrence levels up. That's what it comes down to, but he's a top 5 guy waiting to happen. But let's talk about Derrick Henry. If you watched my content last year, you probably had him. His move to Baltimore couldn't have been a better fit, and it's not a fluke. It's the system that's just going to continue to give him touchdown opportunities. So you definitely can't stack the box with Lamar Jackson at quarterback. So when you get in the red zone, Henry is just walking in more often than not. He's going to catch a couple passes per game, but that's never going to be something that really gives him that elite ceiling that would get him into like the top tier. But I don't think you need it, especially where you have to draft him. There's obviously double-digit touchdown ceiling. I mean, the ceiling is probably closer to like that 15 touchdown spot. So you kind of draft this guy, and he's a fun guy to root for every week. Ashton Jeanty is also going to make it in this tier, and this is the part of the draft where you're starting to swing for some running back one upside, and you really want to see what this rookie can do in this system. They drafted him obviously with a lot of capital there. You're not drafting him for what he did in college. You're kind of drafting him to see what this backfield could be with all the changes that they have made. They haven't had that true alpha guy in the backfield for quite some time. He's young, he's explosive, he's walking into an insane amount of volume. That Pete Carroll offense, Chip Kelly calling plays, Geno Smith at quarterback. There's a lot to like about what this Raiders team could look like in 2025, and that's enough for me to put him in this category. Drake London, the breakout happened. We just got buried by a bunch of mid-tier quarterback play a lot of last year. He finishes the wide receiver 6 overall, but now it's to the point where if we get a few more plays, if we have Penix take a step, London could easily be in that top tier of wide receivers. We're not ready to put him there yet, but he's already showed a massive ceiling. So I think consistency is really the only knock that we can have for him, and I think we want to continue to hammer him at his ADP. So even if Penix is just average, London can pay off in a big way. The usage is there, the talent is there. You just have to stomach a little bit of variance most likely. But if you want my top 150 rankings for free, links in the description. That's what I'm using this year for every draft, but if your league gets it first, you're probably cooked. All right, let's talk tier C. Still top 24 guys, still league winning profiles, but these are the picks that come with some noise. Maybe it's some rookies stepping into some big roles or stars with shaky usage, alphas stuck in broken system. There's a lot going on here, but let's get right into it with Evan Achane. I thought about putting him in a higher tier than this, but every part of this profile kind of feels like a gamble. It's one of those ones that could pay off bigger than almost any running back on the board. I think there's a large range of outcomes here, but let's be honest, Achane is basically a dream. He can rip off big plays at any moment, but realistically, when they started to give him more volume last year, we did see the efficiency drop. So I think as long as we can continue to get that usage through the air and we can keep a healthy Tua Tagovailoa, that's really the cheat code here. 20 points per game with Tua, 7 without. So you're really betting on the Dolphins offense staying healthy and explosive, and we want to hopefully get him a little bit more involved in the passing game and just hoping that the volume stabilizes a little bit, but it doesn't have to actually be that top tier level of volume for him to be just a slam dunk at this price point. AJ Brown, you're not drafting him because he'll win you his league. You're drafting him because he won't lose it. He's been extremely consistent from a point per game standpoint, but it's really tough because of the way this offense is built. He's never going to be that guy that's going to get 10 plus targets in a game because they just don't throw enough, but he is going to be one of those guys that is massively efficient and is going to demand targets in the games when it matters most. Hurts is going to be looking for him, but it's really just tougher with this Eagles offense in general, especially with what Saquon did last year. I would imagine not a lot is going to change there. So elite talent, just a reduced role, but still massive spike potential in week to week. Let's talk Lad McConkey. You really don't need to squint. He's already the wide receiver 1 in LA, and he proved it last year. He has one of the clearest roles in fantasy, and really what's around him, I don't see that changing anytime soon. He showed already that he could be extremely efficient, breaking a ton of big plays, and really earned Herbert's trust throughout the entire year. He's kind of a glue guy for this offense that's just going to continue to rack up targets no matter what. So I think you're betting on volume here, but also the efficiency was awesome to see last year. He might even make it up a tier or two by the start of the season for me. Let's talk Jonathan Taylor. This is kind of starting to enter that dead zone at running back, but we still have to bet on raw talent meeting opportunities. A top 5 back when healthy. We have seen that. Another guy that can break really big plays. The catch here is quarterback play and also who it ends up being, right? So if we get Anthony Richardson really just vulturing a lot of touchdowns in the red zone, that's a concern for an offense that probably isn't going to score a ton of touchdowns in general. So he could kind of flirt with that 250 touches range. That's more than enough if we get that. It's just not a perfect profile, so he doesn't quite make it into the next tier for me. Brock Bowers, this is interesting because for what tight ends usually do, no one would really approach this tier in the top 24 or so, but he's doing what a lot of wide receivers basically are not. He's not just a big slot. He's a red zone guy. He's basically their entire offense, and with the Raiders expected to make a big jump overall, I think that he's someone that is worth kind of being in the top 24 for sure, maybe just borderline, but we'll see what happens with like a new quarterback, a new system completely. Can he replicate what he did last year? I think if there's anyone that can, it's someone like him, but he basically has to be down here in this tier based on some uncertainty, and we'll see if the sophomore slump happens. Let's talk about Rashee Rice. This definitely isn't a fade. It's kind of more of like a calculation. He looked like a breakout last year over the start of the season, the first 3 games, just a massive target share, crazy amount of yards after the catch. He looked like he was going to be an absolute league winner and then goes down with that injury. So he's still attached to Mahomes. We still have an aging Travis Kelce. I wouldn't be surprised if Rashee Rice ends up being a huge part of this offense again right out of the gates. T. Higgins, this is the year where the bet finally makes sense. A lot of his incentives are based on if he plays and if he produces. So the problem was basically him going out as a decoy and obviously trying to play for that big contract. Now a lot of that is behind us. So I still think that if he wants to get to those per game bonuses, he needs to suit up and he's going to perform when he's been out there. There's been plenty of games where T was the one you wanted versus Ja'Marr Chase. So I think that the floor is kind of scary, but the upside has always been real. And this year, I think it's priced in, but I still have him on my bottom tier of this top 24. Bucky Irving, this is your sneaky bell cow in disguise. We saw what he did towards the end of the year last year, still finished RB13 in PPR and really just started a handful of games. So he's added a little bit of weight, cleaned up his pass protection a little bit, and he's definitely earned the trust a little bit from the Bucs staff. And there's not a lot of competition here. We'll see what happens with Rachaad White. And just in general, if he can get a little bit more of that passing game work, I think that could do a long way, or could go a long way for his ceiling. Garrett Wilson, honestly, this is what belief should look like. It's just really tough with the quarterback change here. We're going to a guy like Justin Fields. I know they had a little bit of time together when they were in college, but really he's been a guy that's been pretty volatile, but aggressive, which is nice. We'll see if he can lift up Garrett Wilson. The target share should be there. I'm just a little bit worried about this offense in general, just skewing a little bit more run heavy even than last year across the board, playing a little bit more ball control. I think Wilson still has top 10 upside, but he's clearly in the bottom tier of this top 24 range. But that's my top 24 tiered, ranked, and built to win. Now it's your move.